good afternoon, everybody, wherever you are and however you may be listening. This is the Coach's Corner, and of course, I am here with Coach Bono. Today, no special guest. We are going to break down some film in your realm, special teams, and we got the brand new kickoff. We finally have some tape on it.
That's awesome. That's awesome. How you doing, Bo? It's happy Wednesday to you.
Absolutely, to you too. How's your week going?
So far so good, but Wednesday is truly hump day. When you get past Wednesday, we're counting down to the weekend, and plenty of football to start to be watched. NFL season is going to officially kick off really next week. So, but plenty of college football this weekend, and it's here.
Absolutely. I imagine you saw the Florida State, Georgia Tech. How did that hit for you? Like, I was happy for Georgia Tech. Like, they're a scrappy team.
I was super happy for them. I'm not a big fan of Florida State. I have personal reasons for that. It's not necessarily the institution or even the coach. I think Norvell's a great football coach. It has more to do with other things that I don't even want to give. I don't even want to give credence to by mentioning it. But
that's fair.
But yeah, what stuck out to me was how physical Georgia Tech was. I mean, when you watch the pregame shows, and I think college football is super, super challenging to try to predict anything, early on in the season, because, at least in the NFL, we kind of have you have the benefit of the preseason games. You kind of get a chance to see maybe some of the newer picks, younger players. And then, of course, you got to follow who makes the team and understand that everything's watered down. But you don't have any of that in college football. I think that was kind of the biggest challenge in coaching college football is, you only have, last year's game film, and then
you're 5 months removed from the spring game.
Yeah, and then you have to try to glean what you can based on whatever media releases you can collect and count on that accuracy. But you don't get to see that opponent until the first week, and then it really carries over for the first several weeks of the college season, because you just don't have that much of a library of information, especially if anybody's changed anything. If you have a new coordinator or, new philosophy, that sort of thing. I mean, and it always changes, but, Florida State still should have, in my mind, won that game.
They were the better team.
Yeah, they were definitely. Well, they were the more talented team. But I think Georgia Tech really was the better team. They outplayed them. They out-physicaled them.
Especially between the tackles.
Yeah, they ran the football. Had success with it. Stayed with it, and made fewer mistakes and kept it close, and then found a way to win it at the end with the walk-off field goal, which is,
good teams do.
Yep.
Right? I mean, you can keep it close, close it out.
Yeah. And if you can run the football, I mean, if you can effectively run the football, you can beat anybody.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, it was a fun game. I thought Florida State would win because, to your point, they have the better roster.
Everybody did. I mean, Nick Saban. I mean, Pat McAfee. They all. Everybody. No, not one person picked Georgia Tech for that win. So they probably made somebody or some people out there a lot of money this weekend.
Yeah, whoever took the money line on the dog in that one.
Yeah, they made out big time. So
and shout out to Pat McAfee for getting just like hammered all throughout the day.
It's not actually it's not actually too surprising for Pat. Given his history, so it's good for him.
No, like, way to find a way to be able to do that on national TV. Like, you're just like, okay, hey,
he's in Ireland. It's perfectly acceptable there. So
yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Now, I loved when the play-by-play announcers were handing beers down to the cameraman. I was like, that would be the way to cover the game right there.
yeah, no doubt.
We do have some film to check out. We got 8 different clips, and
Okay.
quite a few of them are actually for the Jaguars. And the Jags were through the course of the preseason routinely had the best starting position. Like they were trying stuff out on their kick returns.
Mm-hmm.
And as we'll see through these clips, some of them will definitely get adopted by other teams as teams really start looking at film, because the Jags had a lot of big returns during this preseason. And there were some other things that were notable to look at. But let's kick this first one off here.
Sure. And disclaimer, this is my first time watching these, just so we're clear.
Well, that makes it part of the fun, right?
Right, exactly.
So this was the Bills and the Bears. And so this one here, you're going to see a low kick angle. And I'm surprised we haven't seen more driving low angle kicks, because they're harder to field.
Right.
And so as you'll see in this clip, he doesn't come away clean, ends up muffing this kick. And that has everything to do with the angle of the approach. Oops. I'm going to go back just a little bit further. So unfortunately, the camera work from the NFL wasn't great there, but you can see that it ends up coming in waist height. And it's hard to catch a ball down there, right? You're used to coming and cradling the ball.
Sure. Well, that's one of the things we've talked about on past episodes is this play, the way it's been redesigned. Hang time is, it's taken out of the equation, because it's, the coverage team and return team cannot move or they can't start until either the ball hits the ground or is caught or touched by the returner. So, in theory, there would be no difference between a kick that had excellent hang time, let's say like a 4.2, or what we would have in the past said was a poor hang time kick, which would be anything under 3.8. So you could even say a 3 second hang time. If the ball was fielded cleanly, there's going to be no difference in that. The kicking team gains no advantage.
Exactly.
And just for our audience out there, and the old way we would cover kicks, the reason hang time was important was, just you think of it this way: is the return team can't do anything until they possess the ball. So the more time the coverage team had to get down there to get closer to the receiver, the ball carrier, then that was going to be to their advantage. The more space there is between the coverage and the ball, the advantage now shifts to the return team. So in an instance like this, and this was always, you have hang time, and then you have effective hang time, which means the ball is mishandled. Now in this case, this should very much play in favor for the kicking team, because the ball has been touched or it's hit the ground, but it hasn't fully been possessed yet where the returner can start to advance it. And so for every millisecond, this was one of the things we used to look at with return men. We used to always try to get our returners to catch the ball moving forward. I would stop the film anytime a returner caught the ball and had to step backwards. And you would slow that down and say, look where the coverage is here when you first touch the ball, and look how much, look how closer they are to you by the time you actually start to move forward. So that, to illustrate that point. But this is an example of the ball being not fielded cleanly, and that really playing into the hands of the coverage.
Yeah, well, and
I apologize to everybody if I got a little long-winded on that.
No, you're good, because I'm going to make it even longer-winded. Because, to your point here, as he steps forward, he wasn't really tracking the ball all that great anyway. coming in, because you can see he's actually reaching out for the ball instead of settling in underneath it, which is why it ends up hitting him waist height, which again, off a driving kick is hard to catch.
Right.
So,
and I think I'm trying to remember what the deal is. If the ball is kicked into the end zone, it comes out to the 35, correct? But if it skips into the end zone for a touchback, then it's going to come out to the 25, correct?
No. So if it skips in, and we'll get to see one of those, it comes out to the 20. So it comes out to the original,
Yeah, so I would imagine you're going to see a lot of that type, kind of the low, it still has to land in the box. So between the 20 and the goal line, but that's not a hard kick to master. I think we're going to end up seeing more, like tail draggers, just line shots for people out there that have a soccer background. They'd be like hard shots on goal. Something that probably never gets more than 20, 30 feet off the ground, but is getting down there quickly, maybe even knuckling.
Exactly. That low angle driving kick, that's what you want.
Yeah, especially in the wind, if you have wind, and Buffalo is a place where both of these teams are accustomed. Buffalo and Chicago are both very windy places. The ball will move around even more, especially kicking into the wind. So.
Yep, absolutely. And we'll actually get to see one of those later in these clips as well.
Awesome.
And then the other thing that was notable on this is when you look at how your lines are staged, right?
Mm-hmm.
They have on the return side, they have their required 7 guys, and then they have their 2 floaters at the very back of their setup zone, right? So they can be anywhere between the 30 and the 35. They've elected to be as far back as possible. And then you watch them just drop back, right? There's no real driving force from this coverage or from this return team. They're immediately dropping back. So they're conceding all of this ground.
Correct.
And then it's compounded by the fact that he muffs that punt. So there was no chance for this to be a successful return.
Correct.
Because your guys are already close, and there was really nothing your team was going to be able to do with that.
Right.
So as we move,
at 5 yards apart, there's not a lot of room for to drop, and then to your point, that second level in that front line, the guys are on the 30 here in this clip. This looks like the Jags in Kansas City.
It is.
You notice where Heath Farwell, this coordinator for the Jaguars, has got those guys tucked in more.
Exactly.
They're standing on the hashes. That'll be another thing that we'll want to watch. How people kind of manipulate that formation in their alignments to depending on by game plan who they're trying to neutralize, or if they're trying to double team somebody, all the variety of different things that we're apt to see out of this.
Yeah, and the Jags make this list a few different times because they did do some things that were very interesting. And the first one here is, in contrast to the one we just watched with the Bills, they don't retreat at all. They engage their blocks immediately. So you can see almost everybody along that line was head up.
Yep.
Like they weren't trying to drop back and concede yardage. Like they might have fallen back 2 yards.
Right.
They're mostly collecting right at the line. Now we get to watch Kansas City have some of the worst tackling ever.
Right. And that factors into it. This should be a dead play. Obviously,
like it should have never gotten there.
Coach Tobe from Kansas City had a lot of coaching to do after that play. It's pursuit angles here up at the very top. You see the contained player, who's the one closest to the 25 at the top of the screen. He's responsible for contain. He overlaps right?
Yep.
He takes a poor angle. Number 26 does, misses a tackle.
Missed him 3 times.
Yeah.
Missed him 3 times in 2 yards.
Yep.
And then he bounces outside, and obviously he runs out of real estate here. But I mean, he had plenty of room. But the biggest thing is even if KC did exactly what they were supposed to, he's getting out to the 25 no matter what.
Right, exactly.
Right.
Yep.
And that's has a lot to do with the fact that the Jags didn't concede room.
Right.
They engaged their blocks and allowed their blocks to push them. But in doing that, it created lanes that we were used to seeing the way football has always been played.
Mm-hmm.
And then we get to see, let's see, after this, we got a
really good job here by 39 for Kansas City, Taylor.
Oh, yeah.
Kind of retracing and taking a swipe at the ball there, knocked it out. That's
absolutely remaining part of the play.
Sure.
Because I mean, it would have been very easy for somebody to give up on it, especially after being forced out of bounds.
Right.
So then we have, let's see, we got another Jags play here. Another one where you can see they engage immediately and they create a basket in the middle. Both of their setup guys come in to catch the middle, and it creates a rushing lane straight up the middle because they outnumbered the defenders.
Yeah, this is a lot cleaner. It's unfortunate if he could keep his feet here, 11, that'd been a touchdown.
Exactly. So we actually get 2 views of this one.
Yeah, that's there's some good blocking there. And again, we said 3 basic rules, or you have three weapons as a kickoff coverage guy. I used to always preach, and we used to always preach, is your eyes, your hands, and your feet. And that part of it never really changes. Your eyes should always be on the ball. If your hands will be on a blocker if you're engaging them, but your feet always need to be gaining ground. And that's what you see kind of in the middle of the coverage there for Kansas City is you see guys engage with blockers, but rather than gaining ground vertically up the field, those guys are getting washed horizontally.
Yep.
All right. And it only takes, it happens in the blink of an eye here. It only takes one guy to really kind of be out of position and to get washed for
and that's this guy right here.
Yeah, for a seam to develop. And this is obviously really good vision by Jacksonville's return man.
Yes.
As he was able to kind of set that return the opposite way, saw the seam develop, and then you see him really accelerate through it.
Well, and the Jags set up an amazing level of blocking along this front edge.
Yep.
So like they performed that as well as you could. And realistically, had he not lost his balance right here,
right,
he's to the house. Because that kicker was not.
That's Harrison Buckner, isn't it? That's the kicker. He should have just kind of, dipped inside of him and worked back up towards the top of the screen.
Exactly. He did that little jump cut, and when he jumped, he just didn't land right. Trips himself up. Turf Monster goes undefeated.
and again, and you can let this play out, but just look, very few of these plays do you see happen where there isn't somebody that misses a tackle. So, that's a missed tackle, right? But you can really see here in the middle, guys kind of pick a side and get washed.
So everybody on that leading edge, absolutely, they got blocked out of the picture. The guy that's diving at his feet was way too far upfield.
Yeah, exactly. Poor angle.
He should have been. Somebody has to be contained.
Right, and contain is level with the ball, not past it, not short of it. Same level as the ball. If you're a contained player, you always work to keep your outside arm and leg free, and you work to get to and stay at ball level. We used to say, turn the ball inside, make the tackle, or make the tackle. Your job is still to make a play on the ball. But you're right. You can see him right there. He's 3 yards past the ball at that point right there, and he's already in his retrace.
Well, and he's not even the outside man.
Right.
So you have multiple
Right.
guys that were
Yeah.
far beyond. And so
Yeah, that those guys might have been the safety, which is another sin. If you're the kick side or fill safety, or we could call them fill and flow. Fill if you were to the side, and flow if you were backside, and that changes as the ball moves. But still way too far upfield to be the fill safety or the flow safety.
yeah, no, I mean, and it's why that gap was so big. Because I mean,
Which is one of the things with this setup with the rule. Coaches have to figure out how they're going to get layers in their coverage schemes. When you see, a good kickoff coverage should resemble a defense, right? You got your first wave, which would, for this example, be your defensive line, not defensive linemen, but your first wave up the field, your faster players, and then you have kind of that second wave of guys that aren't maybe as quick or fast or running as fast, but what that enables them to do is overlap and protect gaps. And then you've got your final level, which is your secondary, which is your safeties, and you want to keep the kickers and one player on either side of the football, and you try to form a triangle on the football. And here you can see it from the wide angle view. If you let it go through again, watching the top of the screen, right? There's no triangle in this back end on the ball. There should, 40 is like the outside edge of the triangle on the left side of the cover team. Buckner, the kicker, would form the apex of the triangle, but there's nobody up at the top of the screen that's the outside, right outside tip of that triangle, which you always want to have that on the deepest level of your coverage.
yeah, and you can see those two guys that you saw from the front
right,
side.
they're like playing it all exactly the same way. Yeah,
exactly. Which at this point they're already behind the play, and they don't have an angle that's useful. Because again, if he doesn't trip right there, he's to the house. Yeah. Like no one's catching him.
He got that. Oh, he saw it, and his eyes and head were moving faster than his feet were moving right there.
Yep. So then coming back to another one with the Jags, again, they were doing.
This was week 1 in the preseason, correct?
This was week 1, and why I used these is because they had they did so many different little things that on the return side that was very interesting. So when you looked at this alignment in the last one, their setup guys created a basket that then they were able to push forward and walk everybody to the right, creating that gap. As we come through this one, their setup guys actually create a mini wedge, which is kind of cool because they wedge up against two guys there.
They're doubling one of the inside cover guys. Looks like they're doubling the 5.
Exactly. Now it didn't end up working out because their kicker, Buckner in this case, was able to hit a driving low angle that they couldn't field.
Right.
And so this ended up being a touchback that did land in the setup zone.
Right. And so that one's coming out to the 20.
That one came out to the 20.
Yeah.
But so there were cool things in this kick though, because with that mini wedge, had he been able to field that clean, he would have been coming in right behind that wedge. There's a huge gap.
Mm-hmm.
Like that would have been, shoot. Hit the wrong piece of the screen.
All right.
So, but they were able to do some things setup wise that was very cool. So they've tried a basket in the middle that worked well. They've done a little mini wedge up front, which had he fielded it, should have worked. So this here is oops, dang it.
Yeah, that's our touchback. Yep.
Yeah, so that's the touchback. So then here we have what they were gonna call because it landed in the end zone.
Right.
In years past, that would have been a touchback.
Correct.
Right? Put your arms out, saying I'm not fielding it. It's
Yep.
touchback. Well, there is no automatic touchback anymore. Just like you can't fair catch it now. It's a live ball when it hits the ground. So he jumps into the end zone, grabs the ball. The ball was back in the field of play.
Right.
This ended up being a safety.
No kid. Wow. Can you play that again from the beginning?
Absolutely. So the kick comes in, lands directly in the end zone.
Yeah, and yeah, that would have been in the old rule. That would have been a dead ball touchback right away.
As soon as it hit. Yeah, as soon as it hit, it would have been a dead ball. If you motion for it, right?
Right.
And had they done this right here on the sideline, where
on kickoffs though, you had to possess the ball as a return. But it would have been a touch
that you weren't returning, right? So like if it hit in the end zone, you put your arms out saying, "Hey, dead ball, we're not returning this." It didn't. You didn't have to cover it from there. Like it could have rolled to a stop, and it would have been, it would have been a dead ball the way the roll used to be.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas now it's live. In this case, because it bounced back into the field of play,
right. He's supposed to return that. He took where he made his mistake was like if that ball had stayed in the end zone, he'd just taken me. It's a touchback. Right?
Correct. Yep.
If but the fact that the ball is a live ball now and it bounced back onto the field of play, and then he brought it back. He brings it back into the end zone here.
Exactly.
That's why it's a safety.
Correct. But
I know Dave Tobe is sick over that, but I'm sure he's glad that it happened in a preseason game so that he could coach off of it.
No question. And the thing is it's not like it was a low IQ play, because you could have, if you did that exact same thing along the sideline,
mm-hmm.
That's a
kick out of bounds.
Exactly. Illegal procedures coming out to the 40.
Right.
So like I get what he was thinking. Obviously, the delivery wasn't good, and he ultimately brings it back into the end zone and, becomes a safety.
Right.
That being said, because everything is new, it actually took him a minute to figure out what it was.
Yeah.
Like even the refs were like, I'm not exactly sure what we're doing here.
Right.
So then from here, we have the first look at the 12th man on the field.
Right. Which they weren't going to do this. And I'm going to brag a little bit. I think I had a hand in this, right? So I went to visit the Jaguars during OTAs, and my good friend Perry Fuel, who I worked with both at West Point and then with the Jaguars under Coach Coughlin. Well, Perry's working in the league office, and he oversees all the officials. And we actually talked about it. I said, I don't like the wizard tee, because it's not going to hold if it's really windy, it's probably not going to do the job. And I said, how are they getting that off of? And, one of the things that they were going to do if they used the tee was the official would have to pick it up. Yep. Right. And then carry it the rest of the duration of the play, which they didn't like that either, because they didn't want the officials taking their eyes off of the action. Yep. So I actually recommended it. I said, why don't you have you have plenty of time to try to hold her out there and have him run off the field immediately. There's plenty of time for that. And I said, I even recommended like put a red jersey on him or something like that. So,
oh, sure.
Number one, I'm glad that they took that suggestion, because this does make it a lot cleaner. It enables the officials to continue to focus where their eyes are supposed to be trained on, which is the play. And you don't have an extra, item on, because they talked about having a ball boy run out there. I'm like, that's ridiculous. You don't want to run a manager out there. I mean,
well, especially because you have added time, because they got to run out to it and then back off. Whereas this, everybody's frozen until somebody touches it. So he has plenty of time to get out of the way.
Plenty of time to exit the field. Yep.
Now they have to they have to actually exit the field.
Right. Yes.
Which is what the other part we're going to watch right here.
Right. Which I think is it looks like Sam Martin, the punter, that makes sense. He's the holder. So this one goes through the end zone.
Yep. So that would come out to the 30, but he was just strolling off, and then
Right.
you see him be like, "Hey, like hurry up, get off the field, man."
Get his butt off the field. Yeah. I would practice that. I mean, the one thing about the way this play is redesigned now, you're going to practice it. There's no reason really it's not that you're not going to do drill work, but you don't have to get creative in terms of how you're going to practice this play. And I would take at least one rep a week where I used the holder and he had to run off the field, both in the, where he has to turn around, because you don't know what direction your sideline could be behind you or you could be facing it. You wanted to practice that either way, both directions.
Yeah. And it does give them a chance to, they get to grab the tee in that scenario too.
Right.
So, I actually like the adding of that. Certainly better than what they were originally proposing with the wizard.
With the wizard tee, yeah.
That just seemed like a situation where someone potentially ended up getting hurt.
Right.
Right.
No question. Or just, you're just going to have, you're going to have those weather games late in the year where it's just, the only way to keep it on the tee is going to be for somebody to hold it.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. When you think of the way that the kickoffs used to be, like
sure.
that's exactly what it was going to be.
Yeah.
So, I didn't see how the wizard was going to work. If the wind is high enough, if you've ever just gone out and kicked some field goals on your own, they work, but if it's windy, it's not going to do it.
Yeah, right. Exactly.
So then this is just a added special teams hustle clip that this was on a missed field goal attempt that the Saints were running all the way back. This was last week, this last weekend, game 3 of the preseason. And this was the Titans and Saints. And the guy that you want to watch is the one that I have circled here. So he is a 6'6", 253-pound tight end. And I would bet money that this clip right here is what got him the final roster spot, because the Titans are carrying 5 tight ends. And I would bet the hustle play right here, because he doesn't have position on this guy at all. So we have the Saints. What is this? Samson Nakua is returning this kick, and went back just a little too far. So he takes this out of the end zone. This was a field goal miss.
Yep.
Look how far he's trailing. He does gain position here, but then at the end of this play, he takes out a blocker and his guy, closing out the half. Keeps points off the board.
Yeah. I think 78 did a very good job as well. He didn't make the play, but he had a hand in it. He didn't allow the returner to get vertical, made him continue to, feathered him to the sideline, which gave 89 an angle over the top of that, enabled him to so that's this is a good job by the big guy 78 here as well. Just forcing that thing to go east and west, keeping the returner from going, north and south, taking a little bit longer for him to get to the end, get to the goal line, which enabled our tight end that you highlighted to get over the top and make that. So that's a really good hustle job by both of those players.
Yeah. You couldn't have asked for a better coverage of a play that didn't go well.
Right.
But it ultimately made it so that nobody ended up with points. They were trying for a 58-yard field goal, as I recall. Right. And so it was, I love seeing hustle plays like that from guys that are realistically probably bubble guys.
Right.
And he was an unrestricted free agent is how he was, or undrafted free agent 2 years ago. And so, he was on that lower end of this roster. But if you see a guy with a motor like that, who chases this dude down for 100+ yards and keeps points off the board, it's hard to not have that guy on your roster.
Yep. No, that was
even if he doesn't
play.
end up with a lot of playing time, like everyone in that room can feed off that kind of energy.
Sure. Absolutely. Absolutely. You're definitely standing on the table for a guy that does things like that.
Absolutely. Absolutely. But yeah, so I mean, there was a lot of good little tweaks. And of course, we're going to see more of them, right? As the weeks go on, especially now that we're doing it for real. We're going to see a lot of creativity. I'm looking to see more creativity on the coverage end of it now.
Yeah. I'm just I want to see if some people do some of the things that like just holding a guy back, letting, to allow him to kind of overlap and give him a chance to see so he can read off of, play off of maybe, players in front of him. So,
yeah. Well, the other thing that was weird that you didn't see out of any of the coverage team is everybody played heads up.
Yeah.
It was straight downhill. I'm surprised that they weren't doing anything with alignment, like a stunt cross to try and peel a guy open.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure we'll see some of that, but it can get risky in that, because typically you're doing that like in your freewheeling zone, in the old stuff, that's happening, up towards the 50-yard line.
Sure.
But you got to be careful because you're engaging blocks so quickly. What you don't want to do is get two players on edges, because you can move yourself into opening up a seam. Exactly.
Yeah. Well, I mean, and of course, anything you're going to do like that's going to be predicated on what the guys on the other side of you do.
Sure.
If they were like the Jags where they're coming straight up, you don't have the time for it anyway.
Right.
You're 5 yards apart. But if it was like the Bills where they're dropping back 10, you can set that kind of, that rub route up for a block, try and get a free guy, right? Because if you can rub one guy off and get to the inside of the other, as long as you beat your man, you can potentially blow that play up. Now, obviously you need your teammates to be disciplined behind you, because if he gets by you, it's 2-on-1 drill.
Right. Exactly. Yeah.
So yeah, no, I'm excited to see how this plays out, just because even in the playoffs, in the preseason, we did get to see a little bit of creativity.
Yeah, and again, we talked about it a couple of weeks ago on Scott's show. It's groundbreaking. It's history being made. You're seeing it for the first time. The game's changed. It's evolved. And what I like is just in the clips that we watched today, you saw all kinds of stuff. You saw a return team make a mistake and it affected the field position. You saw a return team make a mistake resulting in points for the kicking team because of the possession error in the end zone. We saw big plays out of the return team. We saw a ball come out, get knocked out. It wasn't so. I guess what I'm saying is
it's our first shot at 12 men on the field.
Yeah, but we got it's a relative. The play's relevant again. It's not. It's not an extension of. Look, that's why we moved the extra points back to the 15-yard line, right? Because at least now there's an element of, hey, something could happen here, right? This isn't an automatic deal. And it's no longer an automatic, okay, this is, we scored. Let's see, we got the extra point in the kickoff. I got time to go to the concession stand and get a hot dog, and I'm not going to miss anything. TV, they can go to commercial right here because really not. Now, there are going to be plays that are going to be made on both sides of the ball that are going to have an impact on the game, and that's ultimately what you want. You want every play offensively, defensively, in the kicking game should have the same value in terms of the impact that they could potentially have on the game. And we used to talk about that when we talked about the importance of the kicking game. They're not, so I don't know who came up with special teams. The plays aren't, I used to love it when they'd say, oh, this play is the most important play in football. The reality is it's not true. The most important, if you're a player or a coach, if you're a successful team, every single play is important, every single one. And so while I would argue that special teams is not more important, I would always say it's not more important, but it's just as important. And if we want to win, we're trying to win every single play, every phase. And these plays can impact us positively, or if we don't do a good job, we don't buy into this, it could impact us in a negative way. And that's what we definitely don't want.
Yeah. I mean, every time they talk about the most important play, it's always retrospectively, right?
Yeah.
Because they get to see what happened during that game. But when you're playing, the most important one is the one you're lining up for.
Yeah, because you can win or lose on any given play.
Absolutely. Yeah. No, it's I love seeing them revive the third phase of the game.
Yeah.
Because it is something that has felt relatively dead.
It has been. It's like you would have to, you might watch 5 games on an opponent and only see like 2 kickoff returns. So it's, or you're trying to game plan against your kickoff return against their kickoff coverage. You're not seeing the guys do anything because every play's blown dead because they're touchbacks. So,
for sure. Absolutely. Now, like a coach I would love to see a team go and grab would be, let's see Jeff Fisher play around with this a little bit.
Yeah, he'd figure out some stuff. He had huge cojones, in terms of. I would have loved to have had opportunity to work for Jeff Fisher. I'm just saying, I would have loved that. As a matter of fact, man, I'm gonna reach out to him. I think I have a cell number. I don't know if it's any good, but I'd love to have him as a guest on our show.
That'd be amazing.
Yeah, I guarantee you he'd be entertaining as hell.
Oh, no question. And of course, I'd have to bring up the as a Hawks fan, it made me sick, but it was such a creative and amazing play where his entire team faked like it was going to the right. It went to the left, and he just had a straight run down the field because everybody, your kickoff coverage is mirroring whatever your return team is doing.
Right.
So everybody faded to their right, and they just had one guy that was out at the left, and that's the way the ball was going. And our entire team was out of position. Nobody stayed home and straight down the field. Now, amazing coaching job.
Right. Was that was a punt, right?
Yes, it was a directional punt.
Tavon Austin.
That I don't remember. I don't remember who did it, but I just remember watching it and like, man, no way that worked. Crap. Yep. I mean, they sold it amazingly though. Like you couldn't have drawn it up and executed it any better than exactly what they did. Yeah. So yeah, that is one that I would bet he remembers that one.
Sure.
Like there's probably a problem he doesn't, but I bet that one he does.
When he had, they always did a lot of stuff like punt wise coming out in broken formations and stuff like that. But the difference between Tennessee and a lot of teams will do that just as a smoke and mirrors, just to make you adjust, make you burn chalk and that stuff. Well, the Titans under Jeff Fisher would run fakes out of it, and they did that a number of times and were almost always successful with them. He did a phenomenal job.
Yeah. Now, and this one here was when he was with the Rams.
Right.
But Yeah, no, like every time we were playing the Rams, was like, man, we're gonna get burned on something. Like he was always. So, at least once every show, right? Always end up with a freeze up at some point. I'm glad that the information we're putting out is helpful. Hopefully, everybody's going to get a better understanding of this rule as it continues. Because if you listen to the commentation from just around the league in week 1 of the preseason, they weren't even necessarily all accurate in their assessment of what the rules were.
Oh no, I know that's typical. I mean, that's especially when it comes to the kicking game. That's nothing new. Like I literally, there are some announcers, and I'm not going to mention names, where I literally have to like turn the sound off because I just can't listen to them. I end up listening to them and getting more aggravated. I'm not even watching the game.
So
I have to tune them out.
No, I get that. If you are a Seahawks fan, that is the combination of Aikman and Buck. I don't know what it is, but they have a hate for Seattle that is hilarious. Because even during their Super Bowl runs, they're like, oh yeah, they're not going to do anything. It's like, I mean, what are you guys even talking about right now? They've been blowing people out in prime time. You guys are acting like they're scrubs. So it's always very funny. Obviously not talking bad about them in any way, but you can tell when commentators have teams that they just don't love. And right. For that particular combo, the Seahawks are one of them.
Yeah, no doubt.
So anytime it was like Monday Night Football, you're just like, man, what else do we have to listen to? Is there a local coverage that I can dub over this or turn the radio on, something? But so with a little bit of time left, all the cuts came through. We had a unique roster cutting going into this season where instead of having the progressive cuts that they've generally always had, right? After week 1, there was always 4 or 5 of them. And then week 2, there was like 10. And then from there, it was kind of kind of like half and then half is sort of how that went down. And now they're saving all of the roster cuts to the end of the 3rd preseason game. And so they went from, 96 to 53.
Right.
One, that's got to be brutal as a GM to try and do that all in 2 days, because they basically have 48 hours to make that happen.
Yeah, I don't, typically it's not it's not that big of an ordeal because most staffs could probably cut their team a week into training camp, with the exception of maybe 4 or 5 positions, 4 or 5. So they pretty much, know in their mind what they're going to do. And obviously you continue to watch, but, a lot of the decisions are, okay, well, who's going to be the most valuable guys, who we're going to try to really get back to, to our practice squad. Because just so everybody knows, if I'm a GM and I cut Bo Crouch, right, but I really like him and I want to get you on my practice squad, you have to first clear waivers. So I can't just cut you and then put you on my practice squad. I'm going to talk to you and tell your agent, hey, if things don't work out and you don't get claimed, we really want to get you back here onto our practice squad, because you're essentially a free agent at that point. You could end up on someone else's practice squad just as easily. But there is that 24 hours where they have to clear waivers. So if they're not claimed by another team, then they go and there's a lot of gamesmanship that goes on behind the scenes. People will intentionally cut a player early, because some teams, even though they don't have to, they have that luxury. Because let's face it, the reason this is good, the reason the cuts are good at the very end, because the way it used to be, you'd go into that last preseason game and you've already cut a bunch of guys, and then there's a whole bunch of other players that you're trying to protect because you don't want to expose them unnecessarily in a preseason game and get them hurt before the regular season starts. So you ended up with this group of players that in that final preseason game were doing everything. It's like they're playing every snap on defense, and then they're turning around and covering kicks. And then guess what? On Monday, you're getting cut. So this is definitely better. It's better for the players. It's better for player safety. But there's still some gamesmanship. There'll be guys that they won't play a guy in preseason because they don't want to put too much information out there, because they do want to try to, protect themselves and try to, get that guy to a practice squad. So they're afraid if they give him too much playing time, he might show out and, get on someone else's radar. So there's a lot of that goes on, behind the scenes, cutting guys so they don't get hurt and they don't end up eating that salary for the year, or cutting them a little bit early because they want to put them out there and have them clear waivers, and then so they can bring them back as soon as they're able to. You'd be surprised what goes on behind closed doors and the discussions and all the things that people think of. And because everybody's trying to gain an edge, and, a lot of time those, the rules are written in black and white, but we live in the gray. That's exactly right. You win and lose in the gray. And it's, you're trying to find ways. I'm going to steal this from the Connor Stallions quote that I read the other day. He's like, I don't cheat, I don't break the rules, but I try to exploit the rules. And,
if you ain't cheating, you ain't trying.
Everybody's doing that. That's what you're, if you're not, then you're not thinking things all the way through,
whenever it comes to rules, you're living in the implied but not explicit.
Yeah.
Right? It's this is the feeling it was written in, but it doesn't actually exclude X. So you're like, well, I'm going to do X until they include it in part of the rule.
Sure.
It's not my fault you didn't think about it.
It's very, very cutthroat, and it won't ever change. And it's entertaining as heck to watch, and we love it. But man, when you're in it, it's serious business because it's your livelihood. And, coming from somebody who had, 9 jobs, over the course of a 20-year career, it's like the last thing you want to do when the thing that you hate the most. And, one of these weeks I'm going to try and talk my wife into coming on the show just so she can talk about what it was like for her. But,
that'd be awesome.
That moving van pulling up is a great thing, but it's also a dreaded thing. It's like, here we go again, and so it's serious business. And
it's something that I think a lot of people don't think about fully either, is they look at the roster size of the 96 going down to 53, but that's not really a fair assessment because a lot of those guys are almost a guaranteed roster spot.
Right.
So it's really about 55 guys clamoring for 15.
Right. No, that's exactly right. And that's kind of the point that I was making earlier. And you articulated it probably better than I did. But yeah, of those 53 spots, probably they know who 48 of them are.
Exactly.
Right? So it's 5 positions, 5 spots. And, going back onto, our example with the tight end from Tennessee, right? Well, they decided to keep 5. Maybe they were only going to keep 4, but now this guy's too valuable. So there's some play there, but by and large, the majority of your decisions are now. Things can always happen, right? The injuries happen, that sort of thing. You plan, or you have a plan, you work your plan, but you got to stay flexible always because things happen.
And sometimes you just end up on a squad that's too deep in a position.
No, there's no doubt. I used to preach to players about that all the time and say, you're not just competing to make this team. You're competing against everybody else out there that gets cut, because you'll see a lot of movement even after teams make their final cuts, because if they keep said player at a position and someone else cuts a player of the same position that maybe your personnel department had rated slightly higher, graded out better, guess what? They'll make that swap, and you look at, typically like the first 4 weeks of the regular season, you always see a lot of roster movement, particularly from teams that weren't maybe as good the year before or have a new staff. Coach Parcells used to always call that churning the bottom of the roster. He was always, that those last 9 spots, last 8 spots were, those guys were better not ever get comfortable, because he was always churning that, bringing guys in to work them out and trying to upgrade in those positions.
Yeah, well, and I mean, a prime example of that is, Seattle brought in a ton of free agent linebacker, talent. And so there was a younger guy on our roster, Jamie Sheriff, who had a great preseason, right? He ends up with 3 sacks and, 2 sacks, 3 quarterback hits, a couple of tackles for loss. Absolutely just a motor running all over the place. There wasn't room for him.
Right.
Do I think he ends up on a roster? Based on the film, I don't know how he does it. I'd be really surprised. Certainly if somebody ends up with injuries at linebacker, no question. You'd want a guy like that around. Or you look at a guy like D. Eskridge, who has been part of the Seahawks organization for a number of years, had a little bit of unfortunate luck with some injuries, but, showed out in preseason, ran a kickback for a touchdown, looked sharp. But we already have 6 receivers that are top flight guys. I mean, are you going to replace Eskridge with Bobo or JSN or Lockett? Or, I mean, no, you're not, right? You have a top echelon receiving core,
right?
And despite the fact that he absolutely showed out and, showed great vision while he was running, great speed, there's only 53 spots and you already have 6 receivers.
Right.
I mean, sometimes the music stops and you don't got a chair.
Yeah. And every other pro personnel department, especially if they have a need at receiver, is aware of that, because they're looking at everybody else's roster. That's what scouting isn't just for college players to make, teams have entire pro scouting departments, and their job is to track every player in the league, to continually grade them, because players just like everybody else, and no one's out, in the words of the legendary coach Bo Schembechler, you're either getting better or you're getting worse. You're never staying the same. And so, those evaluations are ongoing. Every single thing gets looked at, and there is no stone that goes unturned when it comes to the National Football League in terms of trying to find the best talent that's out there.
Yep, absolutely.
So if they don't find a way to keep him, my point is he'll end up on someone else's roster.
I would bet that he does. I'd be surprised if he clears. Eskridge might, because of the injury history. But a guy like Sheriff, I'd be surprised if he passes waivers. I'd be surprised if he doesn't get through the waivers.
Right. But someone will pick him up.
I would think so, based on what he showed. But that gets us to the top of the hour. Hour always flies by.
Yeah, this was a great show. I enjoyed this, Bo. We should try to do this like every other show or something throughout the season. Just pick some plays off and break them down. Yeah,
no, I love studying film. So like I'm definitely up for that. Always fun.
Appreciate it.
If you are watching here on YouTube, be sure to like and subscribe. Helps us bring our content to you. If you're watching here on Roku TV, stay tuned for the next hour. Other than that, we will see y'all next week.
Appreciate it. Thanks, Bo.
Thank you.